Hey, what's up guys? Lightsaber Samurai here. I'm back again for another video, and I'm stuck inside like most of you all are, and naturally my mind began to wander towards video games, and I got to thinking about how video games depicted situations similar to the one we are in and we find ourselves in right now. Actually, Radical Reggie did a video about this not too long ago. If I can find it, I'll link it in the description. He talked about 4 games. I've picked 4 games, so without further ado, let's talk about it. Okay, so the first game on the list, this one is by Age Tech, and this one is on the PlayStation 2. I'm talking about Raw Danger on the PlayStation 2. Now, this is the sequel to a game called Disaster Report, which, from what I understand, it's the scenario, of course, is a natural disaster. It seems to have been a pretty good game and a hidden gem in its own right, but unfortunately Disaster Report is hovering around the $70 mark. You can get Raw Danger nowadays for about $20 to $35 or so, so this is the much cheaper option. Like I said, same game, but they changed the name because I don't know if they were just trying to disassociate it with Disaster Report, or maybe they thought it would sell better than Disaster Report if they gave it a cooler name, but Raw Danger is not a cooler name, sorry to say. This plays a lot like Disaster Report. We've got an earthquake that basically destroys much of the physical infrastructure of the city, and floods and everything else that's going on in the city. You play as a waiter, or you can play as a waitress. It's branching paths in this game, which is really cool. The replayability is quite immense, because I think there's like 7 different paths you can go to based on decisions you make. In one path you'll start from another area, and you'll see how that decision that you made as the previous character might affect someone else and may cause them to die, things like that. So this game is a little rough around the edges, but one I haven't played a lot more of, but I want to get into more. But I thought I'd showcase that because it's a game that a lot of people don't know about, and it's rising in price. So if this looks interesting to you and looks like something you'd like to buy, or if you've got the first Disaster Report not knowing that this one existed, definitely track it down and pick it up before it gets too expensive. Okay, moving on to the original Xbox now, and this is a game that Reggie did showcase in his video, but I wanted to talk about it because it's one of my favorites here. That is State of Emergency by Rockstar, an early game by Rockstar, and basically you've got a situation where a corporation takes over the city, and you guys begin to rebel against that. You've got different characters you can play as, like the former DA or a former cop, things like that, and they join the resistance to try to fight back and retake the city. This game is basically it's a riot simulator. You go to these different areas, whether it be the streets or the mall and different places like that, and you basically achieve objectives that basically cause property damage, which is your point system in the game, and I believe other abilities and things are unlocked as you gain more of those. But it's really cool. It was impressive at the time how many people that they can put on screen at once, and you'll be running through the malls and literally hundreds of CPUs. Of course, if you wanted to just mayhem and gun them down, the game kind of discourages you from doing that, but they don't stop you either, so you could definitely do that. I believe the cops will try to attack you more tenaciously if they do. In addition to cops, there's a bunch of different gangs you go up against, and like I said, this is just mindless fun. If you feel like this is a good game that I use to de-stress at the end of a long day, if I just want to beat a bunch of people up. Of course, you can't do that in real life, but you can always pop in a game like State of Emergency. Rockstar's got you covered in that respect always. So if you see this game, this is less than $10 as you saw. I picked this up I think for $5.99. So if you see State of Emergency, go ahead and pick it up. You won't be disappointed. Okay, moving on to the penultimate game today. This is by Sucker Punch. It was an exclusive to the PlayStation 3, and this is Infamous. I've got the Infamous collection here, so I've got part 1 and 2, and Festival of Blood, as well as some other extras, but I'm looking at the original one here, and it's cool. It takes place in the, you know, in this fictional city that's been completely quarantined due to basically a nuclear bomb of sorts going off in the middle of the city. You are the courier who delivered that bomb, and it's up to you to figure out what the heck happened, what, you know, what the truth is behind that bomb, as well as figuring out your new electric powers that you gain in the process. As Cole McGrath, you'll run through the cities, you'll take on gangs of marauders who sprung up since the chaos began, and a lot of missions revolve around surviving and coping with said isolation. Like in one of the early missions, there's a food drop that happens, and you get a hold of the food and protect it from the gang of Reapers who try to steal it from all the townspeople. You get a choice to either zap a few of the townspeople, run them all off, and hoard all the food to yourself, or you can let them go and get their fair share. And so it's got a you know, it's got a good evil paradigm to it, so you can play as, you know, a good guy, which I often like to do, or you can be a complete a-hole. And sometimes it's kind of good to mix both, so you can get a range of powers. You'll get certain powers based on the choices you make in the game. But I thought this was very cool in the way that it kind of had the pandemic and the isolation as like the backdrop to what was going on in the larger story in the game. And so, like I said, this was a fantastic game that goes for dirt cheap now. It had a sequel, as I mentioned, basically the same thing more or less. So if you like this game, or if you're looking at the gameplay, it looks like something you want to check out, definitely do. It's highly recommended for me. Okay, and moving on to the final game on the list, and I saved the best for last, going back to the original Xbox, and quite possibly one of the top 10 first-person shooters I've ever played. You want to talk about a crisis situation, you want to talk about urban chaos, Riot Response. And this is a game by Rocksteady, the developers who would go on to develop the Arkham Knight games. And in this, all hell is broken loose as gang violence has erupted in the city. There's a gang called the Burners, who basically terrorizing the city. You play as Nick Mason, a cop with a new elite force of police officers called T-Zero, and you'll go in and deal with hostage situations, you'll go deal with riot situations, terroristic attacks, like the whole nine. And this is a fantastic game. You play as like a cop, like I said. The coolest mechanic is the riot shield. The riot shield you can put in front of you, and it'll protect you from bullets and, you know, just a lot of hazards like fire, things like that. The riot shield, if you learn how to use it, it'll become your best friend. You know, bad guy come up to you point blank with a shotgun, no problem. Block it with the riot shield. You can even smack them with the riot shield afterwards and brutalize them. You've got a taser to where you can incapacitate enemies. That's really good for when you need to capture someone alive, like a gang leader, for instance, that you could get special intel from them. So it pays to catch them and kind of, you know, perform a non-lethal takedown. Of course, you can just keep giving the taser juice and you can fry them a la Siphon Filter on the PS1, but there's just not enough good things I can say about the game. The graphics were fantastic for the time. The voice acting has the right amount of cheese to it to be endearing. The gunplay feels fantastic. This is a game that's dirt cheap that nobody knows about. It's criminally underrated. So if you see this game, this is also on the PlayStation 2. I prefer the Xbox version better because I think it has a little more polish, and for most first-person shooters, I prefer the Xbox S controller with the triggers than I do the PS2 controller. But you can't go wrong on either system, and if you can get a hold of this game, you definitely need to. Riot Response, one of the funnest games I played this year, so if you see it, definitely pick it up. Alright guys, that's all I got for you, but let's talk about it in the comment section below. Questions, comments, concerns, threats. What are some games that you can think of that kind of depicts pandemics or natural disasters or just an overall crisis situation? Like I said, I didn't make this video to be distasteful given our current situation, but it kind of made me think. And it's not just video games, there's other media like comic books, like movies that kind of depict these same things. There's, you know, a genre of natural disaster movies like Volcano and Twister and stuff like that. And so it's just interesting to think like how different genres of media kind of depict, you know, this now real world situation that we find ourselves in now. So, as always, like I said, let's talk about it in the comments. What are some games that you think fall into this genre? We may look at it again, as it looks like we are all going to be inside for a while, but that's all I got for you. Lightsaber Samurai out. Peace.